You're sitting across from someone at dinner. Maybe it's a family member, maybe a coworker, maybe someone you once called a friend. They're smiling. The words coming out of their mouth sound pleasant enough. But something in your chest tightens. Your stomach knots. Every instinct screams that something is wrong, even though you can't point to a single obvious offense. You leave that interaction feeling drained, confused, slightly worse about yourself than when you arrived. And the strangest part? If you tried to explain it to someone else, you'd sound paranoid. They didn't do anything wrong. Not technically. Not in any way you could prove. Welcome to the world of toxic people. And what I'm about to share with you, drawn from the deep psychological work of Jung, will completely transform how you understand these interactions and, more importantly, how you protect yourself without losing your mind or your humanity in the process. Jung spent decades exploring the hidden architecture of the human psyche. Unlike most psychologists of his era who focused on surface behaviors, Jung dove into the basement of human consciousness. He wanted to understand what drove people at the deepest levels, the parts they couldn't see in themselves, the parts they actively hid from. And here's what makes his work invaluable when dealing with toxic people. Jung understood that the most dangerous dynamics between humans don't happen in the light. They happen in the shadows. They happen in the unspoken, the unacknowledged, the parts of ourselves we've disowned. This isn't abstract philosophy. This is practical psychology that will change how you navigate your most difficult relationships. So let's get into the frameworks that actually work. The first concept you need to understand is what Jung called the shadow. This is the part of our personality that contains everything we've rejected about ourselves. The traits we find shameful, the impulses we've suppressed, the qualities we were punished for showing as children. Here's why this matters when dealing with toxic people. Most people completely overlook this, but toxic individuals often have enormous, unintegrated shadows. They've rejected so much of themselves that these disowned parts leak out sideways, contaminating every interaction they have. Let me paint you a picture. There's a man named Derek in your office. Derek presents himself as confident, helpful, always willing to offer advice. But something about Derek makes people uncomfortable. He gives compliments that somehow leave you feeling smaller. He offers help in ways that highlight your incompetence. He shares concerns about you that sound caring but plant seeds of self-doubt. Derek isn't consciously malicious. That's what makes this tricky. Derek has suppressed his own insecurity so deeply that he doesn't recognize it anymore. But that insecurity doesn't disappear. It transforms into a need to subtly undermine others. By making you feel small, Derek's shadow gets to feel big without Derek ever having to admit he feels inadequate. Jung would say, Derek is projecting his shadow onto you. He's making you carry the feelings of worthlessness that he refuses to acknowledge in himself. Sit with that for a moment. How many Dereks have you encountered? How many times have you walked away from someone feeling terrible about yourself without being able to articulate why? How do you apply this? The first step is recognition. When someone consistently makes you feel a specific negative emotion, whether that's inadequacy, guilt, shame, or anxiety, ask yourself a crucial question. Is this feeling mine, or am I carrying something for them? This isn't about blaming the other person for all your emotions. Sometimes our feelings are genuinely our own. But toxic dynamics often involve an unconscious transfer. They export their unwanted feelings into you. Recognizing this pattern is the first step to refusing the delivery. The practical move is this. After interacting with someone who leaves you feeling drained, take 5 minutes alone. Sit quietly and ask yourself when the negative feeling started. Was it present before the interaction? Did it arrive during? Can you trace it to something specific they said or did? Or did it seem to seep in from nowhere? That seeping quality is often a sign of shadow projection, and once you see it, you can start to consciously refuse it. Now watch how this connects to Jung's second major concept, the persona. The persona is the mask we wear in public. It's the curated version of ourselves we present to the world. Everyone has one. It's not inherently bad. You probably act differently with your boss than with your childhood best friend. That's normal adaptive behavior. The problem comes when someone's persona becomes completely disconnected from their true self. When the mask isn't just a social tool, but a prison they've locked themselves inside. Toxic people often have extremely polished personas. They know exactly how to appear charming, competent, caring, or whatever the situation requires. But behind that mask is a completely different reality. Consider a woman named Valerie. Valerie is beloved at her church. She organizes charity events, remembers everyone's birthdays, speaks in a warm and gentle voice. Her public persona is practically saintly. But her daughter tells a different story. At home, Valerie is cold, critical, and controlling. She uses guilt as a weapon. She withdraws love as punishment. The warmth she shows in public completely vanishes behind closed doors. This isn't hypocrisy in the simple sense. Valerie genuinely believes she's a good person. Her persona has become so dominant that she's lost contact with her shadow entirely. She can't see the cruelty because acknowledging it would shatter the image she's built her entire identity around. The part nobody mentions is this: the more perfect someone's public image, the more suspicious you should be of what lies beneath. Not always, but often enough that it warrants attention. People who have genuinely integrated their shadow don't need to maintain flawless personas. They can admit flaws because they've made peace with their imperfection. How do you apply this? Pay attention to consistency. Watch how someone treats people who can't do anything for them. Notice if their warmth has an audience. See if their kindness evaporates when no one's watching. And here's a practical technique. If you suspect someone's persona is hiding something darker, watch what happens when they're mildly frustrated or when something doesn't go their way. Stress cracks the mask. Small inconveniences reveal character more reliably than grand gestures. The person who's sweet to your face but snaps at a waiter is showing you something important. Believe it. Here's where we go deeper. One of Jung's most powerful insights was about projection, and understanding this will fundamentally change how you interpret criticism from toxic people. Projection is when we take something we can't accept about ourselves and attribute it to someone else. We literally project our inner movie onto the screen of another person. This happens constantly with toxic individuals, and it creates a bizarre mirror effect that can drive you crazy if you don't understand what's happening. Let me show you how this works. Marcus has a colleague named Tanya who constantly accuses him of being defensive. Every conversation, Tanya finds a way to mention how defensive Marcus is, how he can't take feedback, how he always has excuses. Marcus starts questioning himself. Am I defensive? Maybe I am. He ties himself in knots trying to be less defensive, but somehow Tanya's accusations only increase. Nothing he does is ever enough. Here's the reality that Marcus is missing. Tanya is the defensive one. Tanya cannot tolerate any criticism whatsoever, but she can't see this in herself because it threatens her self-image. So she projects that quality onto Marcus. Now Marcus is the defensive one, and Tanya can feel superior by comparison. The more Marcus tries to prove he's not defensive, the more he plays into the dynamic. His very efforts to disprove the accusation become evidence of defensiveness in Tanya's eyes. This changes everything about how you respond to toxic criticism. When someone repeatedly accuses you of a specific fault, especially when the accusation doesn't match feedback from other people in your life, consider the possibility that you're looking into a mirror. They're showing you who they are, not who you are. How do you apply this? Develop what I call the projection test. When someone criticizes you, especially repeatedly for the same thing, run through these questions. First, does this match what others tell me? If 10 people say you're defensive and one person says you're not, you're probably defensive. But if one person insists you're defensive and everyone else is baffled by the accusation, something else is happening. Second, does the critic display this very trait? Often the projection is almost comically obvious once you look for it. The person calling you selfish is the most self-centered person you know. The person accusing you of manipulation employs manipulation constantly. The person who says you're too emotional has rage simmering just below their composed surface. Third, does defending yourself make things worse? In normal disagreements, clarification helps. In projection dynamics, defense escalates the accusations. If nothing you say or do reduces the criticism, you're probably caught in a projection loop. The strategic response is counterintuitive. Stop trying to prove them wrong. Their accusation isn't really about you, so disproving it accomplishes nothing. Instead, create distance. Limit exposure. Refuse to engage with the distorted reality they're constructing. Now we arrive at Jung's central concept, and this is where smart people truly separate themselves from everyone else in how they handle toxic relationships. Jung believed the goal of psychological development was individuation, the process of becoming wholly yourself. This means integrating your shadow rather than denying it. It means recognizing your persona as a tool rather than your identity. It means withdrawing your projections and owning your complete self, light and dark together. Most people completely overlook how individuation protects you from toxic people. But the connection is direct and profound. Think about why toxic people are able to affect you so deeply. Usually, it's because they hook into something unresolved within you. They find the places where you're not solid, where you're still uncertain, where you still need external validation. Someone who has done the work of individuation has far fewer hooks available. They know their worth independent of what others say. They've acknowledged their flaws so they can't be destabilized by having them pointed out. They've integrated their shadow so it can't be manipulated by someone else's projections. This is the deepest protection against toxic people, not techniques for managing them, not scripts for responding to them, but genuine psychological development that makes you less vulnerable in the first place. Consider the difference between two women, Laura and Michelle, both dealing with the same toxic mother-in-law. Laura hasn't done her inner work. She still desperately needs to be seen as a good person. She still carries shame about her background. She still questions whether she deserves her husband's love. The mother-in-law senses all of this unconsciously and exploits every opening. Comments about Laura's housekeeping trigger her shame. Implications that she's not good enough for the family hook into her deepest insecurity. Laura spends every holiday devastated, every interaction leaving scars. Michelle has walked the path of individuation. She knows she has flaws and accepts them. She knows she has worth that doesn't depend on anyone's approval. She's integrated the parts of herself she used to hide. The same mother-in-law tries the same tactics with Michelle, and they simply don't land. The critical comments are heard, acknowledged, and released. They don't hook into anything unresolved because Michelle has resolved them herself. Michelle isn't cold or defensive. She's actually warmer than Laura because she's not constantly guarding herself. She simply occupies her own psychological space so completely that intrusions bounce off instead of penetrating. How do you apply this? This is longer work than a single technique, but here's where you start. Begin by acknowledging your shadow. What qualities do you hate most in others? Jung said, "Whatever we can't stand in others is usually something we've rejected in ourselves." The person who disgusts you with their greed may be showing you your own suppressed desire for more. The person whose arrogance infuriates you may be reflecting your own disowned ambition. This isn't pleasant work, but it's liberating. Every part of your shadow you integrate is one less hook for toxic people to grab. Next, question your persona. Where do you perform rather than exist authentically? What would happen if you dropped the mask? The more gap between your persona and your true self, the more exhausted and vulnerable you'll be. Finally, withdraw your projections. When you react strongly to someone, ask whether you're seeing them clearly or seeing parts of yourself you've disowned. This is humbling, but essential. Here's the final principle, and it's the most practical of all. Jung understood something that most people learn too late. You cannot heal someone else's shadow. You cannot integrate their rejected parts for them. You cannot love them into wholeness. The smartest approach to truly toxic people, people who show no interest in growth or self-awareness, is strategic non-engagement. This doesn't mean anger. It doesn't mean dramatic confrontation. It means a calm, clear recognition that this person operates from a place you cannot reach, and that continued engagement will only drain you. Think of it like this. If someone is committed to misunderstanding you, no amount of explanation will help. If someone needs you to be the villain in their story, you'll never prove your innocence. If someone's psychological stability depends on diminishing you, your growth will always threaten them. The wise response is not to fight harder, but to step back entirely. A man named Thomas spent years trying to repair his relationship with his brother, who seemed determined to compete with and undermine him at every turn. Every olive branch became kindling for a new fire. Every vulnerability Thomas shared became ammunition later. Thomas finally understood through Jungian work that his brother's shadow was vast and unexamined. His brother needed Thomas to be lesser. His entire self-image was built on being superior to his younger sibling. Thomas didn't confront his brother with this insight. He didn't try to help his brother see his shadow. He simply stopped playing the game. He reduced contact to the minimum required by family obligation. He stopped sharing personal information that could be weaponized. He accepted that this relationship would never be what he wanted and grieved that loss privately. This wasn't victory. It wasn't defeat. It was wisdom. How do you apply this? Recognize when you're in an unwinnable dynamic. If you've tried multiple approaches over an extended period with no improvement, if the other person shows no capacity for self-reflection, if your presence seems to trigger their worst qualities, consider whether continued engagement serves anyone. Create boundaries without announcing them. You don't need to declare war. Just quietly reduce access, shorten conversations, decline invitations. Be warm but unavailable. Toxic people often don't notice gradual withdrawal because they're too absorbed in their own drama. And here's crucial. Release the need for them to understand why you've pulled back. Explaining your reasoning gives them material to argue with, manipulate, or use against you. Your understanding is enough. Their understanding isn't required. Jung once wrote that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. This is the profound gift hidden inside difficult relationships. Toxic people, as painful as they are, offer a strange opportunity. They show us where we're unfinished. They reveal our hooks, our wounds, our unintegrated shadows. The smartest response isn't to become cold or cynical. It's to use these painful dynamics as fuel for your own development. Every toxic person you encounter is asking you a question. Where are you still vulnerable? What haven't you resolved? What parts of yourself are you still rejecting? Answer those questions honestly. Do the deep work Jung pointed toward, and you'll find something remarkable happening. The toxic people in your life will lose their power. Not because they've changed, because you have. And that transformation, the movement toward wholeness that Jung called individuation, is worth more than any victory over any difficult person could ever be. Your growth is the ultimate answer to toxicity, and it's an answer no one can take from you.